If you love brandless and you love vintage, I have got you covered. In this video, I'm gonna be sharing with you 20 of the best brands to look for when it comes to vintage shoes. If you're new here, then welcome to the channel. My name is Lee Meyer. I'm a stay-at-home mom of 4, and I've made well over $100,000 flipping used clothes and other items on sites like eBay, Poshmark, and Mercari. And now I'm on a mission to help at least 1,000 resellers be able to hit that $100,000 mark for themselves. To help you out, I've got a ton of free goodies for you. You'll find them down here in the description below this video. This includes things like my best brands list, the list of 150 brands that has led me to the $100,000 mark and beyond. You'll also find a link to sign up for my free $100,000 reseller challenge. In that free challenge, I show you exactly how to reach $100,000 for yourself this year. And I show you how to do it in very minimal time, very part-time hours. It's not about having to work harder or put in more time. And in that free challenge, you're also going to discover the very best things to be selling right now in today's market. All right, so with that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started with today's video. I've got 20 different vintage brands of shoes lined up for you. These are the top brands to look for when you're outsourcing used items for your reselling business, no matter what platform it is that you sell on. So let's go ahead and get started. Great. So we are ready to roll. As we're getting started, I just want to show you how many sales there are. Now, everything that I am going to be sharing with you is on the eBay platform, just because it's a little bit easier to do research. It's easier to see numbers like what I'm going to show you. So I have results pulled for sold items that match the term vintage boot, and it's pulling back 15,000 results. So I'm showing you this because this gives you an idea of how much of a market there is out there for vintage items, and especially vintage shoes. Vintage items are trending and shoes are also popular. Pair those two things together and you have the recipe for hot sales. That's vintage boots. And then on vintage shoes, there were a number of results that come back, and there's a little bit of overlap here in the search results. The number that comes back is about 6,800, and this is for men and women, kids as well. So as we're getting started, I'm going to be going through these different brands, and we're going to be specifically looking at sold items, not just the items that are listed, but actual sold items, because that's where you need to be pulling your data from when you're looking up comps. Make sure that you're checking those solds, not just active listings. So the very first brand that I have to share with you is Diesel. This one does not have quite as many search results as some of the other brands that we're going to be discussing, but this is definitely a brand to be aware of, as well as styles like this. And I'm going to show you what I mean here in a second. So it came back with about 89 search results, but most all of these are selling for over that $50 price point. Everything that I'm going to be sharing with you in this video, I have not put in a price filter. So what you see is what you get as far as the prices that these are selling for. So we've got 125, 65, and we got one a little bit below $50 there, another pair there for $100. So really solid if you come across this brand. This is what the tag is going to look like on the inside. Oftentimes with these older shoes, vintage shoes, these tags on the interior are often worn off, but that's what it should look like if it's there. And then on the outside with this brand, you're going to see the name Diesel in multiple places. So it's going to be pretty hard to miss these. They make it pretty obvious. Let me go ahead and head back to that one. And so you can see how much those sold for. This pair went for $98. Now you're going to see sold across the picture. So these are sold items, and I have hand selected items where a best offer was not accepted. When a best offer is is accepted, there will be a strikeout through that price, as well as additional text saying that a best offer was accepted. So the seller listed those for 98 with best offer, and they sold for full price. So don't be afraid to turn down offers or not even give that offer option if you're an eBay seller, at least initially. This is another pair of diesel shoes here. Again, there's that tag that is on the inside. You can see how dirty and worn those are on the inside as well. And these are also missing the laces off of those. So keep that in mind with this price. Okay, so those sold for 78, basically $80 in that type of condition. This is another pair from the same brand, Diesel. So you can see the wear there on the bottom as well as the brand label there on the bottom. There's the brand tag on the inside. And this is what these look like. But it's really a lot about the style of these shoes. I'll share in a second. That pair of Diesel shoes sold for $100. Now, this is a random brand that has sort of a similar look. Unfortunately, the tag is upside down. It's called Sonax. I'll show you how it's spelled out here in a second, but there's what those look like. So it is kind of more about the look. There are lots of other just random brands that are selling that have this kind of look to these. Now these do have a little bit of a wedge to them, but you can see how they kind of have that almost similar look to those Diesel shoes that we just saw. And those sold for $50, even being, kind of somewhat of a more obscure brand. This next brand is Oakley. And I know for me, I typically think about sunglasses when it comes to Oakley. Oakley does make a lot of great clothing items, including shoes. And so I pulled out these sold items for their shoes, for specifically their vintage shoes. And these are some really solid prices with these. We're talking, close or over that $100 price point. So we've got $125, $89, $89, $126 there. So as I'm scrolling through these, there's a lot of them that are actually over that $100 price point. So keep your eye out for these. Their items are almost always going to have some sort of kind of stretched out O on them, like you're seeing there on the side of the shoe. There's a little bit of a marking there on the inside with the size, but pretty minimal when it comes to just the name of the brand on these. You're really looking for that O. That pair of shoes went for $149. This is another one from Oakley. There's the tag that is on the inside. There's what the bottom of those looks like. Again, you're seeing that O shape there at the toe of the sole. O there on the side of the shoe as well. Those sold for $85. Got another pair here from Oakley, and you're seeing, those similar even on these grommets, shoelace. You're going to see those O repeated. And I saw that or see this in a lot of Oakley shoes, have that shape just repeated in various places on the shoe. So that pair sold for $160. The next vintage brand to be on the lookout for is Doc Martens. And so this one does have a big number of items, 700 plus came back in the search results for Doc Martens. And there's, all sorts of different types of items that are selling, boots, different styles of shoes, men's as well as women's. And there's just really a big variety when it comes to what to look for. There's nothing really to, stay away from when it comes to this brand, other than maybe shoes completely falling apart. Even if they're not in the best of condition, they are selling for, in some cases over $50, depending on the style of the shoe. So this is an example of one here. And it used to be that you would only look for ones that were made in England. That is no longer the case because newer items are now considered vintage. Vintage is by definition about 20 years old. So newer items, are more likely to be made in China. For example, the pair that you're looking at here, it does say made in China there. And then this is what those look like. Those sold for about $79, actually exactly $79 for that pair. This one is a made in England pair of boots, and they will say on them that they're made in England. You don't need to guess on that. But that one sold for $229. This is another one that's made in England. Oftentimes they'll be on the stamp on the bottom of the shoe, but this one does have it on the inside here. So you're seeing made in England, and then the size down here. You're also getting a really good look at the inside of the shoe and just how well worn that is on the inside. There is what those look like. Those went for $178. The next vintage brand to be on the lookout for when it comes to shoes is Converse. Again, this is another big seller. There's about 500 search results that came back. And as far as these numbers, as far as I can best tell, it's about 3 months worth of data. Occasionally you'll see an item that is older, so it makes it very hard to do research in some cases. So there's all types of different styles when it comes to Converse. So we're seeing some high tops here that sold for $160. We're seeing shoes that are a little bit more colorful. We're seeing some sandal type of slide slip-ons, just all sorts of shoes that are selling when it comes to Converse. It's not just their classic style. So this is actually a pair of basketball shoes, and then those sold for $100. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on these a little bit, but they are, very well worn. They're at the toe. You're seeing a lot of wear. There's a lot of discoloration. The seam is separating there. So $100 for, even that condition with these. This one is their classic Chuck Taylor high top, and here's what these look like. Again, they have quite a bit of wear to these. Those sold for $140. This is another of that style, but more in a low top version, different color. Those actually sold for $1,900. In that case, I definitely recommend using eBay's authentication service. Now, I had to show this one because this one is super interesting to me, and I actually saw multiple of these selling from various brands. These are what are called professional clown shoes. So you're seeing those huge, bulky toes on those big round toes, also in, the rainbow color, and they've got a lot of peeling on them as well. But those sold for $125. Now, I want to take a second to invite you to join the Empowered Reseller membership program. I would love to be able to welcome you inside of our amazing community. This is where I'm able to connect with members. It's where I'm able to even do things like store reviews, account reviews, listing reviews, to give you personalized feedback. And it comes with a huge course file, as well as I'm doing new trainings each and every month live with you. So down in the description below this video, that is where you will find the link to go and check it out. And I hope to be able to welcome you into our community soon. The next vintage brand to be on the lookout for is Hush Puppies. And this is more of a comfort style of shoe. And they do make shoes for men as well as women. You do want to be a little bit more cautious with this one as far as what you're sourcing, because you're seeing some items in here that are selling for, $19, $20. When you go for more unique styles, those are going to be the ones that sell for a little bit more money. So I'm seeing ones here in light blue suede that sold for $75. But when you can find those more unique items, those are, going to get you a premium price. So these are a pair of kind of two-toned mint and white. Those sold for $79. Those are new, by the way. Almost everything else in this video should be in pre-owned condition, but it is surprising how many times you do come across new items at a garage sale, at thrift stores, various places that, have been sitting in a box for literally decades. This is another pair of Hush Puppies that are blue suede, and they do have the dog on there. It's a little bit hard to make out, but these are on a pair of loafers. There is that Hush Puppy marking on the inside of the shoe. There's what those look like. Those sold for $50. This is another pair. Again, this is one that is more unique. It does have a few flaws there, a few marks there at the toe of this item. These are kind of a brogue wingtip, and those sold for about $60 with one bid on them. The next brand to be on the lookout for is Nike. And rather than, spending an hour just talking about Nike or making multiple videos, I decided to pick just one thing to look for when it comes to Nike, because there's so much to talk about. So I did narrow it down to the Nike Shox shoes, just because these are super easy to identify, super easy to spot from, several feet away. So to say a quarter mile away, maybe not quite that far, but what makes them easy are the springs that are in these shoes. And with these, a lot of them are selling for $50 and higher, some, almost pushing that 100. Got one here, $150 for that pair there. But, really solid find if you come across these. So there is what I mean by the spring at the back of the heel. And with this pair, that one sold for $125. This is another pair. This is what they look like at the bottom of the shoe. And there are those kind of springs there at the shoe. Those sold for $75. Got another pair here. It's gold and white. Those sold for $76. The next brand to be on the lookout for vintage shoes is Puma. And with this, again, it is very similar to diesel style shoes, where it is very kind of a low profile. And again, if you come across other brands that have this look, don't hesitate with looking up those sales comps. So with Puma, most of these prices are pretty solid. You're seeing a few mixed in there that are in the $20 price range, but most of these, are $40 plus dollars. There's one right there for $67, another one there for $500. I'm not sure why those went for that much. This is a pair of kind of ballet flats. And you can see the Puma marking there on the toe of those shoes. There's not much other marking on these shoes. Those sold for $51. Got another pair of Puma here. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in on that. So they are pretty good about putting their logo in various places on their shoes. This pair sold for $65. And then this is an interesting pair of lace-ups. Again, with a lot of these vintage shoes, the markings on the inside may be very well worn off, as is the case with this pair that you're looking at. So these do have a lace up across the top. And here's what those look like. They also have a few minor flaws with this one, but that one sold for $120. The next vintage brand to look for is Adidas. And there's a few different styles with this, but anything really vintage when it comes to this brand is doing pretty well. Most of these prices are pretty solid. Again, I don't have any price filter. I don't have a minimum price set on these search results. So you're seeing some more towards the lower end range, around $30, but most of them are quite a bit higher. We got a pair there that went for $195, another pair for $130 there, another $150, so some pretty solid prices for a lot of these vintage items. This is one, this is what this style looks like. That one sold for about $50 plus shipping on that one. You can see the tag there on the exterior of the tongue where it says the brand with the 3 stripes. And there is the trefoil marking on the outside, their logo. This is what the toe of those shoes look like. And these are, again, from the 1980s. Those sold for almost $60. This is another pair of Adidas that is definitely, older. This is a skate style shoe, which is a little bit more rare style for this brand. That one sold for $60. The next vintage brand to be on the lookout for is Red. So this did come back with probably a little bit lower than normal for the search results, just because I had shoes in there and not boots. If I put in boots, I could almost guarantee that there would be more. This is one definitely BOLO brand. If you come across this, there are some other hats mixed in here. I did not do the best job of filtering these, but these can sell for, into the hundreds of dollars. So here's a pair here that went for $325, $238. And then this is what their tag looks like. So all of their tags will say made in the USA, and then they do have that red wing on them. This is what these boots look like. There's a good overall picture for you. Those sold for $200. And then this is their Pico style boot. This is a boot that has a steel toe. So you're going to see that red wing tag there on the inside, and then Picos there stamped into that tab on the outside of the boot. There is what those look like. Those sold for $150. And then one of their lines to be on the lookout for from Red Wing is what is called Irish Setter. So this tag is a little bit blurry, but it does say Red Wing and then Irish Setter sport boot, I believe is what that says. So here's what they look like. They do look very similar to other Red Wing items. But just know that is another one of their lines. So that pair of boots sold for $136. Probably already know vintage is one of the most lucrative categories to be selling in. Probably why you are watching this video. And if you're interested in learning about other items to be on the lookout for, including brands, then you'll want to be sure to check out my vintage clothing guide, where I give you 150 different brands and items to be on the lookout for. I'm going to link to that resource over here for you. The next brand of vintage shoes to be aware of, be on the lookout for, is Dr. Scholl's. Now, with most of these, they are going to be wooden soles. So that's primarily what are selling when it comes to their vintage items. There's a few other items that are selling mixed in here. We've got a pair here that sold for $25, but most of the results that are coming back that are selling for, over that $50 price point do have a wooden sole to them. So let's take a look at some of these. This is a pair of slides, and so you can see the tag back there at the back of the shoe. A lot of these are worn off just from that sliding on the wood, but that pair sold for $65. This is another pair of that wood sole that was sold for $85. Here we got another pair of slides. Those have that floral there on that slide piece, and then those sold for $80. The next vintage brand is Tiger, and this is by Asics. And this is one of their lines, and it's still made today, but when it comes to this vintage line, these are very popular and there are a good following when it comes to this brand. So a lot of these are going to be on the more colorful side. The more colorful, the more unique the item, oftentimes the more that those are going to sell for. But you're seeing quite a few, selling for over that $50 price point. Some in there maybe closer to that $100 price point. On the back of the shoe is often where you're going to have the name Tiger. These are very worn off, but they do have that tab or flap kind of sticks up, and that is common in a lot of their styles. I'll show you a better look at what that Tiger looks like. But this pair went for $50 and it's not even in a very good condition. So here's one where that Tiger label is much more intact, a little bit easier to read there. And again, they will be on the back heel of their shoes. These are definitely one that fall into that more colorful look. Those sold for $86. This is another pair here that's just black and gray, but a little bit higher top with those. Those sold for $80. Now this next vintage brand is what is called Florsheim or Florsheim. I'm not exactly sure on how to say this one. And this is one where the prices can vary quite a bit. So you'll want to price accordingly, aim high, but know that more unique items, of course, those are going to sell for a little bit more. And they can, if they're more unique items, they will sell for $100. So we got one there that sold for $100, or maybe even a little bit more than $100 in some cases. Other items, are going to sell for a little bit less. We got a pair there that went for $11. It could have also easily been a pricing mistake on these. We got a pair here, that went for $200 by, on the other end of the spectrum. So this is a pair here that we're looking at, and those sold for $103. Got another pair here where it's got the brogue detailing as well as the wingtip there at the toe. You can see some of the wear there at the bottom of those shoes. And then let's go ahead and take a look at the inside of those, that marking there. So there is their brand label. Those went for $103. This is a pair of what are called beetle boots, and a little scuff there on the inside of those, wrinkling on those. Those went for $70. And then this is a women's pair. This is what they called Victorian / saloon girl. So you're seeing that up here in the title. That one sold for $99 for that pair. So they do make some more unique items. This would definitely be, one of those that are a little bit more unique. It's also one where they did a really good job using a style keyword like Victorian with these. And those style keywords, even when it comes to shoes, can be a really good thing to get your items in front of the right buyers. I do have a poster where I give you 80 different aesthetic style-based keywords that are selling right now. So I'm going to link to that resource over here for you. The next vintage shoe brand is Reebok. And with this one, again, you're going to want to use caution with everything. You're going to want to make sure you look up comps. So there's going to be items that are selling for, a little bit lower on the lower end. Got a couple here in this row that are selling, for $13. We've got one here in the middle selling for $125. So it can vary widely, even among the same brand. So to look at a couple of sales of these, this is a pair of high top sneakers that's got those Velcro across the top. There's the marking on the tongue of those shoes. And then those sold for $72. Those are women's shoes. Got another pair of Reebok high tops here. There's the brand label on the back. We've got the little flag there on the side. These had actually 20 bids on them. I will always try to point out when the items did sell on auction. So this one had 20 bids. This was an auction item. That one went for $123. If I don't put that out, then it is a fixed price listing. This is a colorful pair. It looks like purple and yellow with these. But those ones sold for $75. They did go ahead and throw in some different they did go ahead and throw in some different sports teams to be able to kind of identify those colors with, like LSU as well as Lakers. And they did go ahead and throw in some different sports teams to be able to, identify those colors with. So they put LSU as well as Lakers for those shoes, $75 that those went for. The next vintage brand to be on the lookout for is Ed Hardy. Now, of course, Ed Hardy, anything, whether it's jeans, jackets, whatever it is, purses, those can be really good items, but the shoes are good items as well. Some of them are going to be a little bit more towards the lower side of things at $25-ish, but they can push 50 up to, $100 in some cases. That pair there, it's got a mermaid on it. It's probably one of the reasons why that sold for a little bit more. Another reason why is a lot of times people, may price under not knowing that these are more desirable items. So this is a pair here. And with this one, that one went for $53 for those. Got another pair here that has skeletons there on the side, or skulls there on the side. Those went for $36. And then we got a pink pair here with some rhinestones. Those went for $50. The next vintage brand to be aware of is Vans. Now there's a few different styles, but the ones that seem to be selling for the most money are the more traditional skater look of shoe, where it's very thick with the padding. And I'll show you what I mean by that. And with this, this is an example of what I'm talking about here. You're going to see that Vans marking. Sorry, it's a little bit upside down there. Get a better look at that logo there for you. So that logo is there on the side. That pair went for $75. This is another of, the kind of more traditional looking skating shoe where it's very thick there at the tongue. You can see all of that padding. You can see all of the padding around the back of the heel. And that's just black on black. That one went for $71. And then this is one that's a little bit different style. This is in used condition, but it does come with a box. It's in pretty good condition. It looks like it's, for the most part, just been sitting in a closet. Kind of a two-tone blue. Those sold for $247. Now, if you're looking for other really solid brands when it comes to just shoes in general, whether it's vintage or just overall, I do have a big money brands guide that specifically covers shoe brands. There's over 115 brands that are covered in that guide. You get all of those tag photos so you know exactly what to look for, as well as it comes with all of the done for you research of average sale price and sell-through rates. So I'm going to link to that resource over here. This next brand is a little bit more of an obscure brand, but I did want to point this one out because it's not necessarily about these big name brands like Vans, Reebok, or Nike. With this brand, it's definitely more about the look. So if you come across other items that have this similar look that are of a different brand, there's a good chance that there are a market for these items. So this is an English brand, and they do make some very unique items. We got a pair here with spider webs, some with flames on it, some with cats. So we'll take a little bit closer look at these. This is a pair that has, those cats there at the toe of the shoe. And this is a brand that is called Tread Air. So that is what they look like on the inside of the shoe. That pair sold for $100. This is a pair of those flame shoes. It's got flames there around the toe as well as the heel there on those shoes. There's the marking on the inside. Those sold for $190. Now this next one is not so much of a brand, but it's more of a category of shoes to look for. And these are kids shoes, including Disney and other TV shows. So what you're looking at is actually a pair of water shoes. And this is the big red dog, Clifford. So you can see Clifford there with his sandcastle. That pair sold for almost $50, like $48 for a kid pair of aqua socks. This is a pair of Blues Clues, and these, you see the Velcro there across the top of those shoes. Those sold for $90 for a pair of kids' shoes that they're only going to wear for probably a month. This is a pair of Winnie the Pooh. So you can see Pooh there on the side of those shoes. Those had 20 bids on them, and it went for $142. This is a pair of Barney sneakers. Those sold for $75. We're talking a toddler size 5 there. This is a Little Mermaid pair of sandals. So you can see the Ariel there on the top of those shoes. You can also see, some of the aging of these items. So definitely, an older item that was sold for $50, even in that condition with those, minor flaws. This one is a Sesame Street item. It's got Cookie Monster there on the side with some googly eyes. And then those shoes sold for $49. The next vintage brand to be on the lookout for is Skechers. Now with these, this is another one where there's several different looks, several different items to be on the lookout for. Some of them are more kind of a lace up loafer, more of a dressy style shoe that are selling. So there's a couple of those mixed in here, $65, $68. There's some that are a little bit more on the athletic side of things. As we're scrolling through here, you're seeing a few of those. This is one actually that kind of does have that look similar to the diesel shoes that we started out with at the beginning of this video. So this is a pair of what are called jammers here. This is just a style of one of their shoes. And this style in particular is selling really well right now. So those are a lace up style. And those sold for $100. And then we have a pair here that are a little bit more on the dressy side, like I mentioned with that. Those sold for $59. And then we have some of the more athletic tennis shoe style, and these are a platform. And you can see some of the scuffing at the toes of those shoes, pretty heavy scuffing actually. And then those sold for $80. All right, so this next brand is Airwalk. And you're gonna notice that there's a lot of commonality between some of these shoes when it comes to these skater style shoes. And that's what it is for these Airwalk. So Airwalk was initially sold in skate shops. It was taken over by Payless Shoe Source there for a time, but it's really those kind of skater style shoes of what is selling for the most money. So again, as I'm scrolling through these, I don't have any sort of price filter on the search results here. What you are seeing is what you're getting when it comes to those sale prices. So we got a pair of the skater shoes here, and they will say on them pretty clearly that they are Airwalk. They do have kind of that A marking there on the side. To identify their brand, that is their logo. Those sold for $97, not even in the very best of condition. We got another pair of kind of casual style skater shoes. There's a better look at that kind of and then that one sold for $50. We got another pair of flame shoes. So we saw flames just a little bit ago. That is a feature or a theme that was really common right around the Y2K era. So if you're interested in other themes like that or ways to be able to identify items that are from the Y2K, I do have another video where I go through other themes like this that were really popular around that era and are trending right now. So this is what these look like. You can see all of the lint, all of the hair on these. So, not in the cleanest condition. There's a lot of wear, even on the toes of those in the suede. So a lot of dirtiness in those. But those did sell for $47. They did go ahead, and I'm noticing here in the title, use a word in the title of distress just to let you know, these are not in mint condition. Now this next one here, I could not pick a favorite brand when it came to vintage boots. Picking a favorite brand is like picking a favorite kid. It just cannot be done. So I did go ahead and pull up all search results when it comes to vintage boots, but there are so many different brands to be on the lookout for. One of the most common that you're going to come across is Fry. So we got a couple here in the top row of these, $176 for those. Another brand to be on the lookout for when it comes to vintage boots. I wouldn't necessarily call those boots there, but one that is really common in the boot category is Harley Davidson. So there's lots of vintage Harley Davidson selling. It's definitely something that is highly in demand. Also Acme. There's so many different brands. I could just stick with boots, and we could be here all day talking just about boots. A couple of other brands to be on the lookout for. This is Danner. So you can kind of make out here at the side of the boot that it's stamped there into the leather. You're seeing some of the scuff marks in there on those. There's quite a bit of wear there at the toes of those boots. But that pair sold for $79 in that, distressed condition. Now, this is a pair of boots that's from a brand that's actually made by Sears called Mont Blanc. If you are interested in other, department store, big box store brands like this from stores like Sears, JCPenney, Kmart, I do have another video where I go through brands that are selling for a surprising amount. So I'm going to link to that video up here. So here's what those look like. Just a pair of suede boots. Those sold for $50. And then we have a pair of Tony Lama. I had to throw these in, but this brand has such great items. And this one has so many details. It's that red and black and just such an intricate design with a lot of their shoes. So this pair of boots sold for $120. So I'd love to know, do you have a favorite vintage brand when it comes to shoes? Drop it in the comments and let us know. And if you would love to learn more about other vintage items to be on the lookout for, I'm going to link up here to another video that will walk you through even more BOLOs when it comes to vintage, one of the most lucrative niches to be selling in right now. Thank you so much for hanging out with me, and I will catch you in the next video soon.